Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is another do's and don'ts video, and this time we're going to be focusing on drawing mouths in colour pencil. So I'm going to go through the do's and don'ts way, and I'm going to be giving you as many tips as I can for how you can improve your mouth drawing. But if you do want to follow along with me in real time and have more kind of tips and techniques, as well as learn how to draw eyes, hair and skin and all that sort of stuff, then I have got that available on my Patreon. And because I know I get so many questions about it, my materials are all listed in the description as well, so you can check out what I'm using to make these drawings. But anyway, let's get straight into it with the don'ts first. And the first mistakes really come down to the sketch that you're drawing. And here the sketch is inaccurate, even though I did spend a bit of time trying to tweak it and make it kind of as accurate as possible. It still isn't quite there with the accuracy, so you do need to spend a lot of time really making sure that initial sketch is perfect before you go in and add the colored pencil. And the second mistake is just that I've done it too dark, so the pencil lines, especially on the teeth, show through. So once I get into colouring, the first mistake that I made was I went in really hard with my first colour that I used. And this means that I burnished too early, and as you can see, when I add different colours over the top, it comes off really muddy and not very smooth at all. So instead you need to lightly layer rather than just burnishing straight away. So again, another thing that's a common mistake is using a very blunt pencil, and this means that you're going to get all of the white grain of the paper showing through, as you can see here. So you really want to make sure you're always using a sharp pencil, and this will help fill in all of that white grain. Another thing you don't want to do is outline the teeth. A lot of beginners, they kind of outline the teeth so it looks like there's a lot of black lines in between them. And another mistake is just outlining the edges of the mouth as well, which can be very cool for some styles, but not for realism. But anyway, those are a few little mistakes, and now let's go in and see how you can fix them. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm blocking in the darkest shadows, and I did use a reference photo. But the main difference you'll see here is the fact that I'm going really light to start with. And I did already do the sketch first. It took me a bit of time, and because I do it so light, you can't really see what I'm doing on camera, so there's no point showing it. But just make sure you get that accurate sketch, and as you can see, it's really light. You can hardly see it, and I can hardly see it when I'm drawing, which is what you want. You just want to be just able to see it. But anyway, I'm going in with a base layer on the lips now, and the key is to have a really sharp pencil and to really lightly layer the colours rather than just going in straight away with a heavy layer of your first colour. So I'm going in circular motions and working the pencil into the white grain, and then when I'm satisfied with that base layer, I'm going in with a little bit more pressure on that same pencil just to get the shadows more established. So I want to get the shadows established so I know where the main structures are, and then I can build on those shadows with other colours. So another tip that you can use to improve is to use a variety of colours. Don't just use a couple of colours on the mouth, otherwise it will look a bit flat. Try to glaze lots of different colours over the top to really give it depth. So pick out a few different colours. There might be some warmer areas or cooler toned areas of the skin. And like with this mouth, there was little areas that needed a bit of like orangey red tones adding to them, and then more areas that were a bit pinker. And adding these little subtle changes in colour will really make it look that much more realistic. So I added a bit of burnt sienna over, which was a cool toned colour. It was the burnt sienna 10%. And I added that over the whole of the mouth, but you can see that it stands out more in the highlighted areas because of the fact that it didn't have much of the other colour on it. So once I've got that base layer down, I want to go in with more shadowed colours and really build up those shadowed tones. I like to add a base layer, and then I like to build up the shadows on top, and it's really simple to build up the shadows and get that smooth look because we haven't already burnished the paper, which means that we haven't pressed hard on the pencil. Because when you press hard on the pencil, it means that you're flattening out the tooth of the paper, which gives you kind of that smooth look, which means that you can't add any more colour pencil on top. It just doesn't stick to the paper as well. But now that I've got all of my shadows down and I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going in a bit more hard with the colour pencils just to really get that smooth look. And I am using the Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils for this. They do have that really creamy texture, so they do blend really, really nicely. But I used that same pink colour that I initially used to add another layer to just build up that saturation of colour and also smooth it out. So you don't have to just use the colour and then not use it again. You can just keep going back to the same colour and layering. So now I'm demonstrating what I mean by you can add different colours and glaze different colours to make it look like it has more depth. So there were some areas that were a bit warmer, a bit more orange toned. So I made sure that I went in with some burnt ochres just to really kind of make those bits pop out. So now moving on to the skin around the mouth. And before I used a blunt pencil, which meant that I had lots of the white grain of the paper showing through. And so here the pencil is much darker, and even though at the moment there is a bit of grain showing through, we are going to keep layering until we get that smooth. And the whole reason you're going to get smooth like skin or smooth anything is just by layering the colours and slowly building up that pressure. So what I'm doing is I'm still layering that burnt ochre 10%. I added a bit of burnt ochre 50% for the shadows. And then when I burnish, I go over with a lighter colour. So something like the Buff Titanium, which is like an ivory off-white colour. Like now you can see in real time how I would blend out that area. So what I'd like to do is, so when you did your first layer, you would have applied the pencil strokes in a certain way. So when you go and blend it out, try to go opposite to that way or go in circular motions, and this will really help smudge out all those pencil strokes so you don't get them showing through. But again, you can watch me do this in real time over on my Patreon. Also, I have got a lot more do's and don'ts videos coming, so if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tick that bell icon to get notified on my future videos. So I'm still going in with those colours to blend. I added a bit of white as well, especially for the highlights, just to really make them pop out. And now what I want to do is just add a few more details on the mouth and darken up the shadows between the teeth and on the gums. I'm also adding little creases, and one thing that I didn't mention before on the don'ts is that when you do creases, a lot of beginners tend to make them straight and rather than them curving with the natural curve of the lips, and this is something that will make your drawing look flat. So what you want to do is when you do little creases or little highlights or anything that's detail on the lips, you want to curve it in the direction that the lips are actually going in to make them look fuller, to give them dimension, and to really just make them look plump. So I'm adding some little highlights with the white pencil, and I'll press harder anywhere where I really want this white to show up. I'm also using it for little highlights and to blend parts of the gums. And adding these highlights just adds that level of detail and makes it look nice and realistic because it isn't just really smooth anymore, it has a bit more texture to it. So when I said you don't want to outline everything, what this means is that you want to try and get really soft transitions between areas. So where the lips meets the skin, there's not a harsh line. You really want to try to feather that colour into the skin. So where that pink is meeting the skin, add a bit of that skin tone over where the top part of the lip is to try and blend those so it's a softer transition. It's not just really harsh edge. The only way you're going to get a really sort of harsh edge is if it's someone wearing makeup and they've got lipstick on, for example. Then obviously because you've drawn that on, it will be more of a harsh edge. But if it's just like natural lips or like lip gloss on and you can see the natural lips underneath, then you can see that if you look at your own lips, there's not a harsh edge, it more just feathers into the skin. So I like to take that white pencil and just create little markings from the skin onto the top of the lips just to sort of break it up a bit so it's not just one line. So now I was going in with a colour called Russet, which I just used. It was like a really vibrant red tone, and I just used that for some of the shadows and some of the more darker areas like the corner of the mouth. But now let's start to work on the teeth, and teeth can be really, really tricky. I know that I always found teeth quite tricky, and I think it's because of the fact that you want to keep them white or you want to draw them white, but there's a lot of other tones that just don't seem, it seems a bit weird to put them in. So like here, the first color that I'm using is a raw umber, and if you use the eyedropper tool on something like paint, you'll be able to more closely see what colors you exactly need, because it depends on kind of the lighting situation and the color that's cast on the teeth. It might be cool toned, it might be warm toned. So I recommend going into something like paint, importing your reference photo, and I recommend using the eyedropper tool on the lightest part, the darkest part, and a mid-toned area to see exactly what type of colors you need. But for this, I am using firstly a layer of the raw umber 10%, which I used to block in all of the shadows, and I basically added a really light layer of that everywhere but those whitest, brightest highlights, which even on those brightest highlights, it still wasn't completely white. And then I went in with a bit of the French grey 10% and 30% just to add more shadow. The further back the teeth are, the darker they're going to be, because they'll be cast in more shadow, because obviously they're further from the front. So to make it look three-dimensional, you need to have the front teeth looking lighter, and then as you go back, they will have more shadow cast on them. Now to get that smooth look, again, I want to blend it out. I don't want any white graininess showing through. So I went in with the Buff Titanium because I didn't want it to be still white. They were quite, they did have quite a bit of tone to them. So I wanted to go in with more of that off-white cream tone. And then I used the white to pull up some little highlights. Whereas if I went in with the white straight away to blend, then I wouldn't have really had anywhere to go for those highlights. So another thing you might notice when you're drawing teeth is the fact that there'll be a little tint of flesh tones within the teeth getting reflected. So I made sure to include some of the pink from the lips and some of the flesh tone from the skin within the teeth, just a little subtle touch, and this really just brings everything together. Also, when we did the Don'ts version, you noticed that there was kind of obvious lines and very grey lines separating each of the teeth. And especially there was a line separating the teeth from the gum. But in reality, it's more of a soft transition. They quite seamlessly blend into each other. So depending on your reference photo, have a look and try to kind of figure out whether it's a soft transition or whether it's more of a harsh edge that separates them. In this case, it was just a really nice soft transition. So I'm finally going in with those back teeth and just adding a bit more shadow. I'm layering the different colours and blending it out as I go. Layering a bit more of that raw umber 10%, just for those darkest shadows. And then I always make sure that that looks smooth before I move on. So now, like I was saying, you want to glaze some other colours over the top to give it a more saturated look. So I just went in with a bit more of that orange tone. And then just to finish off, to give it that watery look, I'm going in with a white gel pen. Normally, I would go in with something by Brush and Pencil called Touch Up Texture and Titanium White Powder because it's more archival. But I didn't want to mix loads of that up just for this little study. So I just used the white gel pen. But anyway, guys, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Remember, I've got lots more tutorials coming out, and if you like to see tutorials and fan art videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me. And also, remember that I've got those real-time videos over on my Patreon, as well as lots of other colour pencil tutorials for you guys as well to check out if you want to learn even more. And also, I've got the materials listed in the description. But anyway, that's it for today's video, and I will see you very soon. Bye everyone!